Mpisi. Let me welcome you once more, honourable members again, and in the same breath also welcome the stakeholders, the very important stakeholders, our stakeholders as a committee, and also the support team again once more, and the department. I can see that the MEC will join us, but the senior officials of the department are here. The HOD, thank you. When the HOD is here, then the MEC is here in absentia, but I'm sure you'll be joining us. Perhaps it's the link issue. Welcome again, HOD and the senior officials of the department. This is our first virtual stakeholder engagement session. It's supposed to be a public meeting, it's supposed to be a live meeting, but you would understand that we're operating in the new normal. So new normal, new ideas, new approach, and here we are. And I must say, I'm beginning to really appreciate this new normal. You know, you don't even waste time. Okay, one meeting immediately in a split second, you're in the next one. I must say it improves productivity. It has really improved. But as I've said, I apologize to the stakeholders for time. The committee meeting took longer than expected, but obviously it was also for your own benefit, because as we are engaging with the department, we do raise critical issues that do affect yourselves and the relations thereof. So without really wasting much time, the agenda was circulated. So one would have gone to the apologies. I think the apologies will remain the same. We are missing honorable members in the main. 2 or 3 honorable Alberts and honorable Itani, especially 2. And yes.
Sorry to interrupt. The MEC is waiting in the lobby to be added in. If the organizers of the meeting could just accept him in, then he'll be here.
Okay. Okay. No. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Honorable Hassan. Thank you so much. As I was saying, that the apologies, just to brief the stakeholders quickly, is that there's only 2 members that are not present. There seems to be something wrong because when that IT, I think IT must. Charlene?
Yes, Chair.
Can you please find a way of communicating with ICT to assist with the MEC?
Okay, sure. I'll give them a call, Chair.
Yeah, so that they can accept, because he's struggling to enter. I can also see him in the lobby. I can't even accept him myself as well.
It keeps saying admit failed.
Yeah, it's also giving me the same error. Okay. Okay, as I was saying that those are just to brief the stakeholders because of time. Those are the honour members. And the agenda is there. We're going to be receiving presentations from the department led by the MEC, and then we're going to get from the AG and also from stakeholders themselves. They will be giving us presentation, then we'll have a discussion thereof. In case you might not have the agenda. So do you agree with okay, Honorable Adams?
Chairperson, indulge me for a moment. Maybe it's also expedient and important that we introduce the members that are present. I don't think stakeholders will know who the members are. Is it necessary, you think, Chair?
Okay, no, thank you so much. No, it's fine. I agree. Yeah, perhaps let me do that because stakeholders might not be knowledgeable about who the members of the committee are. Correct. Thank you. Honorable Hassan has just put on the video so that we can see her. She's
I was
the
ready,
youngest. She's the youngest MPL current in the legislature. I don't want to speak about background. I'll talk for a long time. She's got a lot of history at a very young age. Honorable Adams is our bishop there in the legislature, but equally an MPL. Can we have Honorable BC as well? Can you switch on the video? I'm sure you know him. He's a former chair. Honorable BC, yes. I can see he's cruising there. Thank you, Honorable BC. We've got Honorable Makubela. There's also, there's Honorable Makubela. Can you switch on the video? He's on hold. I think there's a problem also. He's having a challenge there with his net, with his connection, because it says he's on hold. And then we have Honorable Ramlifu. Where are you?
Good afternoon.
Yes, I'm sure you've seen him in the sector for a very long time. He's also, I think, after the MEC and the HOD, he's one of the longest in the sector. So he's been in the sector for a long time. I'm sure you know him very well. And the MEC, I think MEC, can you switch on your video? I know maybe you don't need an introduction, but sometimes perhaps you need to be seen. MEC, I see you have joined us. Okay, he has gone. Okay, we have lost him again. All right, and myself here as the chair of the committee. Yes, I think that is the honorable members present in the meeting. As soon as Honorable Makubela improves his connection, I will get him to switch on his video so that you could also see him as well. Thank you for that. Honorable Adams, I think it was necessary that I should do. So, honorable members, the agenda is before you. I think the process is also is the same. Do you have it before you? Honorable member, can you see the agenda?
Let's accept the agenda first.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, Honorable BC. We don't want to really waste a lot of time. Okay, now to the purpose of this session, honorable members, is to engage with our stakeholders. Firstly, we identified special schools as our FIS. We adopted it within our program. And this is an engagement with special schools as stakeholders, as key stakeholders for currently in our term. So we will be getting, as I've said, that we will be getting a presentation from them and also the department. So I think that should then cover at least the quick introduction and the background briefly, because I know that we're together in the sector, so I don't need to start from scratch, because it's not a broad public meeting where some might not know what is a special school. I think here all of us we are we are acquainted with the sector quite well. And I think I made a mistake. I should have asked the HOD to switch on his video. HOD, the next item, it was for the MEC to present, but we can see the MEC is struggling. So switch on the video. Oh, how blessed are we? We've got the HOD and the MEC at the same time.
Chair,
Thank you.
I'm here, but as MEC reported, I will be switching over to the command center that starts in the next 15 minutes to present the social security report at the command center.
Thank you, HOD. MEC, I think the MEC, the video is frozen again. MEC. The video, is it me or is the video frozen? The MEC is frozen again?
It's frozen,
It's
Chairperson.
frozen.
No, we
It's
can
frozen.
hear you, Chair.
Sorry.
HOD?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah, I think we were struggling with the MEC for some reason. You can see his video is just froze there.
Yeah.
So it will mean that it's either we start because you. Okay, let's honorable members, let's give the MEC an opportunity. Perhaps maybe let's start with because we needed to start with him so that he can set the tone. Then the rest of the stakeholders can then come in with their presentation. But I did defer the AG. Perhaps we can start with the AG then. Is the AG here? Honorable Hassan?
Thanks, Chair. I was actually just going to suggest that I know the HOD needs to leave, but maybe one of the appointed DDGs could maybe, fill in that gap so we don't delay for our stakeholders any further. But of course, I'll be led by you, Chair.
Okay, point taken. Yes, HOD?
Chair, I would respectfully request that I hand over the reins to DDG Albert Cheney, who will then give further guidance from a presentation point of view. I do know that the section that we're going to deal with is for curriculum, and DDG Alison Banks, and I think she's also in the line, and we had invited the relevant line managers as well to be available. So between DDG Alison and DDG Albert, they will deal with the presentation. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's start with you, DDG Albert. I'm sure the MEC will come in now. As soon as he comes in, we will give him an opportunity, noting your contribution. DDG Albert.
Chair, the presentation, sorry, the line has not been too clear. The presentation will be done by Hester, who is the Director for Special Schools, and she will give an overview in line with the guidelines that we had received. Hester Costa.
Thank you, DDG Albert. Chairperson, I'm going to load my presentation and then I'm going to start off. Sorry, I'm just putting it on a slideshow. I hope that it will load now. Chairperson, in February, when I presented an overview on special schools, I indicated to you that in terms of the national policy on screening, identification, assessment, and support, a special school is defined as a school being equipped to deliver an extra dosage of support, if I can paraphrase what is stated there in the policy document. So it states that we must be able to provide access to high and intensive educator and other support on either a full-time or a part-time basis. So in our special schools, we regard them appropriate for learners who have high support needs and also learners who then sometimes by default need to participate in an alternative curriculum. So in our special schools, we may have schools that offer more than one curriculum. Some do offer the ordinary CAPS and do participate in the national senior certificate processes, but there are also others that do not participate in that curriculum at all and then follow one of the alternatives, which I will discuss later. In terms of getting into a special school, I think it is a placement process rather than a traditional admission process that is followed by public ordinary schools. And the idea at the end is where there is a possibility for learners to reintegrate into the mainstream, it is really promoted considering that we want to move towards an inclusive environment. There are, however, certain challenges that make it sometimes difficult for learners to reintegrate, but where possible, and specifically in terms of children with specific learning disabilities, some of them do opt to reintegrate into the mainstream when they specifically go to the secondary school phase. So what is important to understand is because of the extra dosage of support that must be offered to these learners, it also has direct resourcing and capacity building implications where at the end, I think DDG Albert will also explain to you the nature of that additional resourcing that needs to happen. So I'm not going to go into this slide in detail. It was presented in February, but basically stating that there is a prescribed process for children to be enrolled into a special school and that it is a placement process rather than a traditional admission process like we know it. In terms of the resources that I want to specifically introduce, and I think when the principals are going to do their presentations, one of the major resources that must be there is infrastructure. It is true that the majority of our schools are traditionally not intentionally built for special needs learners. It is mostly schools that were converted, and therefore they did not comply with the universal access design that we have these days. But I am glad to report that even public ordinary schools being built these days do comply with elements of that universal design, and that all special schools currently on the list for building fully comply with that. In terms of the funding, just to report that we use Budget Vote Program 4, and that there is two elements of budget that we receive. Part of it is for the operations of the school. That covers your curriculum delivery, your hostel subsidies, your LTSM, your therapeutic resources such as assistive devices. But then provincial finance has also allocated to us an amount that we specifically ring-fenced for transport. In terms of educator, the public administration measures prescribes the allocation or gives the formula to determine the allocation of staff to special schools within a context of limited budget. However, in Gauteng, in addition to those allocations or provisions made in those documents, our department has also embarked on allocating nurses to special schools as well as class assistants in schools where possible. In terms of therapists and support staff, I think I already just spoke about the support staff in terms of the nurses and the class assistants, but also just to say that therapists are also, in terms of the public personnel administration measures, there's a formula and there is an allocation to special schools. What is sometimes difficult, and it should be understood that these support staff or therapists, it's a rare commodity. And while school might advertise posts, the interest might not always be there. And therefore, some schools do struggle with a long-term appointment of therapists. Some schools find themselves being stepping stones, recruiting, and then not long, and the therapists move on. In many a time, also purely because of infrastructure, it's so limited, therapeutic space and opportunities are also limited in the school. Transport is one of the major issues and resources that a special school requires. And it's for that reason that we are very grateful of the additional funding that we have received in the past years to allow newly established schools and schools with aging fleets to also replace and expand their fleets, to make sure that we do decrease the burden on parents for getting their children to school. But it is, however, acknowledged that the daily operational costs of transporting learners are extremely costly. And the one resource that we are still struggling with here is the labor intensiveness of the process, giving you an indication that to source drivers for all the vehicles is many a time a challenge at the school level. In terms of the curriculum offerings, I'm going to summarize it by saying that...
Esther?
Yes, sir?
Esther,
yes,
I
sir?
don't know, your presentation is not moving on our side, so I don't want to assume that you are still on the first cover page.
Sorry, sir. I think the presentation will be sent on my side. It's moving. It might be a data issue or what you call it, but on my side. But please be assured that on the presentation I'm talking you through, I'm not sure why it is not moving.
Okay,
Would you like...
which slide number are you on now?
Let me just go out and then I'll... So I have it now on slideshow, so I do not see the number, but it's about number 8 or so.
Sorry, Dr. Costa, you're on number 6.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for that. So
Chair,
It's not moving anywhere.
Chair, I've loaded it from my computer. I'll try and move it with Hester.
Okay.
Thank you.
So,
yes, move to slide 6.
Okay.
Yes, there it's moving. Thank you for that, DDG. Okay, the next slide. Next slide, sorry, DDG. Yes. So in terms of the curriculum offerings at special school, we are very grateful that in the past number of years, the National Department of Basic Education has started the process of formalizing the alternative curriculums. So where we previously knew schools to be schools of skill, there's now a formal curriculum. They call it the Technical Occupation Curriculum. It's a 4-year program, goes up to NQF level 1 or grade 9 as we know it. And that is now the formal curriculum implemented at these schools. Then schools for learners with severe intellectual disability. It is a differentiated curriculum. It starts grade 5. It ends more or less on a grade 5, some subjects on a grade 6 level. And it nicely links so many children who are able or develop such that they can move from that differentiated gaps and then naturally flow into the technical occupation curriculum. Just to also mention that currently our autism units and autism specific schools for high support needs learners do utilize the differentiated gaps. Then there's also the learning program for Profound, and those are also found in either the community centers or the 11 or 12 special schools. DDG, you can move on a number of slides. This is just for your records, indicating the schools and the curriculums they do offer. So DDG, you can move 15 slides because it's per district. The one thing that I can just mention is what we have done in ensuring readiness for accommodating special schools. Oh, let me go to the challenges and mitigation. I think I spoke to those as I moved through the presentation. The one thing that I can lift maybe is the fact that there's mention of a waiting list. As much as we have tried, the demand in Gauteng remains high, and we are making every effort to deal with the waiting list. Thank you, DDG. You can move to the section which talks about readiness for 24 August. Thank you. In terms of the government gazette, with the return of learners, we also had grade 12 learners returning for CAPS, and we had our technical occupation year 4 learners returning. So this slide basically just indicates to you that the majority of learners are returning on the 24th of August, where it is basically the entire school component that will be there, bar a few grades or years that must also join us on the 31st of August. Thank you, DDG. So in terms of what we currently have, as I said, we had grade 7 and 12 returning and technical occupation year 4. Those numbers give you the exact numbers of schools that had learners returning. And on the 24th of August, we anticipate 113 of our 124 schools to receive learners. You will see there's 11 schools that is missing there. Of that 11, 8 is our schools at academic hospitals. And due to the COVID management at those schools, they have requested that we basically do no teaching there. I think they are limiting movement in the hospitals, which is quite understandable. So the educators there just do remote learning. Then there are also 2 special schools with infrastructure challenges that is being addressed. And then there is 1 school where they have asked for deviation for all learners to return on the 31st of August. That is when in Madikizela. Thank you, DDG. The next slide. So for our projections, we have done a projection last week, Friday, and we have estimated that just over 28,500 of the 41,000 learners will return on the 24th of August. It's roughly 70%. And just explaining the missing link there, 1,244 will not return. Those are the learners that are currently in our 8 hospital schools and the 3 schools that I've mentioned. 2,178 will not return, where parents and medical caregivers have reported that learners have comorbidities, and they would advise that these learners do not return. Then there's just over 9,000 learners we are expecting not to return due to other reasons. Many of them were previously because the learners stayed outside the province and there was a limitation on traveling, parental fear, and some parents said that they will first check and then send the learners. We, however, did another blitz and we have the figures, and it seems that the mood has changed a little bit, and we are expecting just over 31,000 learners back on the 24th of August. Our preparations is underway for PPE. We have supported special school with restructuring the timetables and transport routes, reporting and addressing the infrastructural challenges. Where possible, it has been handed over to infrastructure, which have dealt with it. And we're also deploying the youth brigade members to schools that expressed a need. Thank you, DDG. That is just a breakdown of the number of schools per curriculum and who will open and some comments. I have addressed it. It's just another way of putting it. So you will see that the numbers doesn't really tally because some schools offer more than one curriculum. In terms of the hostels, 31 of our special schools with hostels are all going to open. Understanding that some schools are linking or synchronizing their timetable with a hostel admission as well, which means that some schools opted to have 1 week for a specific group, and then they will have the hostel learners there as well, and so forth. There are also other schools that decided to deal with a social distancing challenge by arranging extra transport to transport those learners that stay close by. And then there were also certain schools that took the initiative to use recreational areas as an interim phase as dormitories. Thank you, DDG. This is just an example of the curriculum support we have provided to schools offering the additional curriculums. With that, we also took the standard operating procedures issued by DBE and we contextualized it for special schools, mediating that to all principals as well. Thank you, DDG. There are obviously challenges, and we at no stage claim that we have satisfactorily dealt with all aspects, even though we have really attempted to do that. And just to explain to you some of the challenges that we are anticipating or experiencing, the Department of Social Development are also restructuring their management of children in secure care centers or youth, child and youth care centers. It directly impacts on us as well, as we have 7 schools in servicing learners in those institutions. So we are currently interacting with social development to make sure that we also have fruitful utilization of educators and staff at these institutions. We anticipate that there might be some schools that will need to close for a day or 2 due to reported COVID cases. We are tracking the delivery of PPEs, but we anticipate that there might be challenges, and we have a contingency plan for that. And then, as with public ordinary schools, we also have a challenge with vandalism and infrastructure challenges. Thank you, DDG. And that is from my side. Thank you, DDG Albert.
Thanks, Dr. Costa. Chair, if I may just ask if DDG Alison Bankston wants to add anything.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and honorable members and colleagues. No, I'm fine with the presentation. Thank you.
Chair, back to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, DDG Albert and is it Dr. Costa?
That's correct, Dr. Costa.
Okay, Dr. Costa. Yes, thank you so much. The MEC is still struggling, which is fine. Then we can move then from this presentation and go into the presentation from our stakeholders. Let me open a list. I don't seem to have a list before me. So can we get the first stakeholder to present while I search for the list?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Michelle Hansel from Kuruma School. May I present?
Yes, definitely, you can do that, please.
Thank you. I just want to share the presentation. Good afternoon. I hope my presentation moves forward. My name is Hansel. I'm the Deputy Principal from Kurumus School for Autism in Krugersdorp. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Our school, Kurumus School, has been a school for learners on the autism spectrum since 2015. Prior to that, it was a clinic school, but it has changed completely now. We are now a public Elson school. We have 153 learners who are all high support need ASD learners. And unfortunately, as Acosta referred to the waiting list, we have a very long waiting list for learners on the autism spectrum. We follow the DCAPS grade R to grade 5 SID curriculum, as well as the learning program for profoundly intellectually disabled children. We are following these curriculums as there is not a specified curriculum for learners on the autism spectrum, but our learners benefit a lot from this curriculum. It's very well suited to our children. We do both the curriculum, the DCAPS curriculum and the learning program, because you can never say when a child starts as a 4-year-old ASD child how they are going to develop and what their needs will be further. So then we decide as they go according to their individualized program, which program will suit them better. We want to give as much of an opportunity to all of the children as possible. The curriculum is adapted to meet their needs, and we go from ages 4 to 18 and then beyond for those who are busy with vocational training. We follow a multidisciplinary model and make extensive use of augmentative alternative communication, and every learner has an individualized support plan which is constantly updated and revised according to the development of the child. Educating the community is one of our key activities, and stakeholder involvement is encouraged as a way of empowering our children, as well as advocating for their rights in the employment sectors. And we saw now in the COVID-19 lockdown how much stakeholder involvement helped us to reach all of our children. We also do family and sibling support as part of our program. Support and training is offered by the school-based support team to other schools, to parents and to caregivers. We've developed a training that we offer to schools, mainstream schools, because a lot of the learners who are referred here can actually remain with support in the mainstream, and we try and support the teachers there. We have also reached and schooled every single learner in our school throughout lockdown, and we will continue to do so. We made use of WhatsApp packages that the school provided to the learners, so that every single learner in the school has checked in with their teacher at least 3 times a week, and they've managed to do assessments in that way as well with them. We constantly reach out to the learners. Once a month, resource packages are delivered, either delivered or fetched from the school, and food parcels when necessary to the children. We have a very large staff, and I think that this is an issue at most Elson schools. We have a principal, deputy principals, 4 department heads, 21 teachers and 24 class assistants. Some of our more profound classes need 2 class assistants. We have 2 speech therapists, 2 occupational therapists, a nurse and a social worker, support staff in the hostel and the office and ground staff. Elson schools have huge staff components, which from a management perspective can often be a challenge. Because when they see we have bigger staff components than a lot of mainstream high schools in our area, but our support staff especially, and I'd like to say that please, our PS staff, there's a larger component of PS staff than CS staff, but without the PS staff you cannot run an Elson school. They are vital. And we have at the moment 9 SGB posts, which is problematic. We were very fortunate that we managed to pay them right the way through lockdown and can, as was budgeted, until the end of this year. But a school of 153 children, of which more than 2/3 almost have applied for exemption at the beginning of this year already. And throughout lockdown, we haven't received a huge amount of school fees that have come in. But without those SGB posts, we cannot have the class numbers, the number that they need to be. So SGB posts are a problem, and we're working towards trying to not one day have SGB posts. As a school like this, the funds that we do raise, we do extensive fundraising, could be better utilised than having to pay salaries. Our goal through our children are independence and acceptance. We work very strongly with our community and with other stakeholders to advocate for the rights of these children. We feel very strongly that they have as many rights, and I'll refer to this again later, as what any matriculant in this country has, and that the community supports these children. Our grade 5, DCAP's grade 5 learners, in the from the beginning of, it's a 3 years, the grade 5 is over 3 years. From the first year, they start with proper skills and vocational training, where they go out to work in businesses in the community. And we've reached out to the stakeholders in our community here to say, you need to involve these children, and that so that one day we can hopefully provide employment for them. On this slide is the most important slide, the challenges and the support that we needed. Infrastructure. Our school is actually a school for 45 to 60 learners. We now have 153 learners in the school. We have converted the hostel. When it was a clinic school, all the learners stayed in the hostel. Now we do have a hostel, a smaller one, because we don't encourage autistic learners to be in the hostel. We have found out that they then bond with the caregivers, and then one day when they need to live with their parents again, it is a problem. So we rather support the child in the house. But there are cases, we have a few children who live in informal settlements, and well, we have a lot of children who live in informal settlements, but where the home situation is so dire that they are better off in the hostel, or children from children's homes we have in our hostel. So we've adapted the big hostel to be a smaller hostel, and we now have changed those into classrooms. We were due for a major refurbishment, which we understand cannot happen now due to the budget with COVID and everything. But we still need more money then for basic maintenance of our standing building to keep it in a good condition. Subject advisors and training for DCAPs are problematic for us. The DCAPs training was never rolled out sufficiently. Some Alson schools we support don't even use the DCAPS curriculum yet. They don't even know that it exists. And I must say that we've had more queries from out of our province. We still do help, though, if we can, than in Gauteng. However, some schools are not fully utilising the DCAPS curriculum. And then not all district officials have the knowledge or any knowledge of DCAPS, whether it is a TOC, SID or PSID curriculum, and they don't have enough dedicated officials that have been allocated to Alson schools to support us adequately. We're now being told that we're going to get subject advisors, and we are concerned because we feel that someone who's coming to advise should have more knowledge than the actual members at the school. So dedicated DBS team members also would help us to get learners placed correctly and ensure that adequate curriculum coverage is rolled out. We find even our ISS units in Gauteng West are very dedicated to us, but the minute as matric exams start, everything gets dropped. The minute they have to, with the online admissions, our people the ISS members are working with that, and we don't get anything done on our side. So we would like dedicated DBS team members that only work with the Alson schools and are not called out to go and help at mainstream schools. We really appeal to you to please help our Alson learners be recognised as widely as matriculants. We get so many invitations to Microsoft team meetings for curriculum, and then I will send an email and say, sir or ma'am, does this include us? And they'll say, oh no, sorry, not for Alson schools. And we feel that as we want to bring more professionalism into the Alson sector, and as such we ask that we receive the same acknowledgement as what matriculants would in this country. We wouldn't be sending anyone who didn't know the maths curriculum properly to go and advise a matric teacher, and we ask the same. We ask please that we have dedicated, knowledgeable people working with DCAPs. Also, because we have ASD school, the curriculum is adapted to encompass everything that those children need as well. And if we're going to be having, yes, yes.
We had initially, in fact, I should have said it before you started, that we're giving every a stakeholder 5 minutes, and I think you've gone well.
I have to say, so please, if we could ask for that. That was my last slide. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can we get T. Malungana from Renodzwe Special School? Yeah, Renodzwe Special School. Okay, I've got a hand from Thomas Kasimelani. Thomas? Okay. Maybe it's a mistake. Can we have, like I said, can we have a stakeholder? T. Malungana. Okay, we'll pass. H. Longwano from Thabo Vuyo School. Thabo Vuyo School.
Hello. Hello. Good afternoon, colleagues.
Yes.
Just give us just a minute. We are there.
Okay, Michelle, can you stop sharing, please?
Yes, because you can share. Yes.
Thank you. Yes, is that Thabo Vuyo School that's presenting now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Please, 5 minutes. I'll be.
Yes. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry for the delay. My name is Hope Kamwane. I'm the principal of Thabo Vuyo Resource Center. We are the school for Thabo. Okay, let me just go straight to the slides. Thabo Vuyo Resource Center is a resource center that caters for all schools in Cedibeng West with necessary resources that are needed to support learners in public ordinary schools and to create a conducive environment for teaching and learning to be effective. The total number of staff is 6 therapists, 1 nurse, 30 educators, 1 driver, 4 administrative assistants, and 21 general assistants. Thabo Vuyo is the only special school in the Cedibeng West that caters for learners with severe intellectual disability, that is SID, and we also cater for autism, ASD, profound intellectual, that is PT. The current number of learners, we are having 352 enrolled in the school. 22 in the mentioned number of learners are in the PT classes. 37 of mentioned number of learners are in the ASD classes. 27 of mentioned number of learners are in our grade 5 year 3 group and will be exiting this year. The school infrastructure. School capacity is 231, 17 brick classrooms, 2 mobile classrooms, 3 mobile classrooms on the grade R side, 5 brick classrooms and 4 mobile classrooms are still under construction. Toilets for boys, toilets for girls. And then the kitchen and the hall, therapy center, clinic, speech and audio, mobile room, garages. And we offer the following programs. That is the learning program for the profound, the DCAPs, the ASD as well. And the school is implementing DCAPs with which caters for SID learners. It comprises of phase overviews, assessment plans, and lesson plans as directed by policy. In the DCAP, in the CP classes, partially implementation of the severe to profound curriculum as guided by the GDE is implemented. We are still waiting for the curriculum documents. Under autism, a combination of DCAPs and programs as guided by Autism South Africa, hands-on 1 and 2 as implemented by the Johannesburg Autism School are implemented. All educators underwent DCAPs training. Each educator develops a daily lesson plan in line with DCAP's policy document. The ISPs are developed and implemented. Teaching is done on daily basis as per timetable. Subject teaching is done as per GDE guidelines with grade 4 and 5 learners. Planning is guided by topics and activities as recommended in the DCAP's policy. The managing of curriculum. HODs are curriculum specialists and therefore they manage curriculum together with the ESMT, that is the Executive School Management Team. HODs monitor, manage and control learners' books, work as received from allocated educators. Deputies monitor HODs through the same process as above. Deputies are monitored by the principal according to the submission schedule. Random sampling of educator, personal files and learners' work by the principal is done as part of monitoring and controlling curriculum implementation. Intervention. Teachers who experience challenges implementing learning programs with specific learners follow the CS process through referral and consultation with the school-based support team for support. The therapists are part of the school-based support team and supports where possible in this regard. The therapists provide support to identified learners according to set timetables as well as the need arises. The CS policy implementation is followed to support learners in a form of ISPs, that is the individualized support plan. In the SBST, and educator are not able to support the learner despite intervention strategies. A referral is done to ISS via the CS process through the SNA1 and SNA2 parents' consent form. Skills programs offered at school. The following skills offering are network, office administration, food production, hair and beauty, agriculture. A school-to-work program is also implemented by the therapies for the exiting learners. Due to COVID-19, some changes will, however, be implemented for the rest of 2020. COVID-19 measurements in place, daily health screening protocols are in place, as well as health and safety protocols. PPEs were issued to staff. PPEs for learners were issued to HODs to be issued to teachers who in turn will issue to learners. Home programs, school and therapy were provided to the parents of grade R to 3 learners whom were able to contact. A Zoom meeting was held with the head of the mental health clinics to prepare them for learners coming to the clinics for medical advice with regarding to comorbidities. We decided to refer most of the learners for advice as one of the concerns from the side of health was that many of our learners are staying with grannies who are the main caregivers. If the grandmother should get sick and pass away, the whole support system of the child will crumble. Thank you. I think I'll pause and thank you very much for the opportunity for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. The next school is Readiness. Is it back? Okay, we'll move to Mrs. Lindy Mhlungu. Mhlungu at Sibonile School for the Blind. Mrs. Lindy Mhlungu, Sibonile School for the Blind. Are you here?
Good afternoon, all. Afternoon.
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you. 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
thank you for the opportunity. As it has been mentioned, my name is Lindy Mhlungu. I'm the school principal of Sibonile School for the Blind. I go to slide 3. Slide 1 is slide 2 is the GDE vision, which you all know. And then the school vision and mission. I will just run quickly to slide number 4, which is special needs school for learners with disabilities. Namely, we cater for partially sighted children, children with low vision, blind and deaf-blind learners. The school presently has 2 boarding facilities for boys with a capacity of 100 per hostel, which accommodates learners from all over Gauteng province and neighboring province, like Free State, which is next to the bar, since the school is under the Sidibeng East District. The school caters for underprivileged from poverty-stricken communities, where we experience 80% of parents depending on disability grant for the learners to feed their families and cannot afford to pay hostel fees. In terms of curriculum provisioning, the school has the following programs. We have CAPS, which is the national curriculum from grade 1 to grade 7. DCAPS, which is a program for severe intellectual disability learners from grade 1 to grade 5. And then we have the extended program, which is adapted from DCAPS, which is a SID adapted for deaf-blind learners, because presently there is no learners. And then grade 7 learners proceed to Philadelphia Special School in Pretoria, which is high school for children with visual impairment. And for SID learners, exit at the age of 18 years in grade 5 SID. Deaf-blind learners exit at the age of 21, depending on the severity of the disability. And the SID deaf-blind learners exit to face a bleak future as they do not have access to opportunities due to the nature of disability. GDE support. We have nutrition program in the school. We have school transport, not learner transport, but school transport. Transport that is managed by, and then which has extended programs that are being supported by GDE for our ICT program for the visual impairment, to be specific, assistive technologies that are being used by learners who are visually impaired. And then we have transversal teams from GDE that assist in terms of supporting with regards to some therapeutic programs and many more. Challenges. At staff provisioning, especially professional support staff, like your occupational therapist, a physiotherapist, and staff in the hostels.
Chair, I'm not sure it's only my side. Seems like the presenter has disappeared.
Yeah, she has disappeared.
Yeah,
Me also. We can't hear.
Yeah, she had trouble. I could pick up. Are you back? Principal, for you.
Can I continue?
Oh, you are back. Yes, you can continue.
Okay, can I move to the challenge number?
Two beds like where? A.
Okay. The second challenge is
They're disturbing each other there while they are presenting.
Okay.
Principal,
Yes.
you are continually being disrupted, and we can hear voices at the back. But can you conclude, please, so that we can move, because yeah, we've got quite a number of presentations to go through.
Okay. Actually, this is my very last. Okay. From a department like the Department of Health, DSD, as some of the things have been highlighted already. The infrastructure, hostel classes, old buildings, as Dr. Costa was mentioning earlier, that most of our school was not intentionally built for special needs and learner transport, as it has been mentioned. And safety measures during COVID-19, as our learners are children with visual impairment who are learning through touch. And yes, but there are also systems in place in terms of supporting learners who are at home presently. And inability to admit or place visually impaired learners who are profound due to the lack of resources. That one is MB, which is support SGP not properly supporting the school programs. As I said, that was my very last slide. Alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much. By Helen Keller. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Principal. Thank you so much. Can we get from Itireling School for the Severely Mentally Handicapped, from K. Mulefe? K. Mulefe?
Hello, Readiness is back.
Readiness is back, Sir Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, no, Renate, can you, yeah, let's allow another school, we'll come back to you.
Thank you.
Yes, can you get K. Mulefe, please? Itireling School for the Severely Mentally Handicapped. Okay, we don't seem to have somebody there. Okay, Renate, I can take you. Can you present, please? You have 5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Is the slide available there?
Is the slide available, sir? If we have to start there. Maybe let me start presenting once you have started the slides.
You can start presenting while we were trying to share.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, Readiness Special School was established in 1985 and was registered as an SID school, that is the School for Severely Intellectually Impaired Learners. These learners have secondary conditions over and above intellectual impairment. Examples of such secondary conditions are epilepsy, autism, cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy, hard of hearing, and speech problems. By the way, all these conditions that I just mentioned have been diagnosed and they are appearing in the learner profiles. The operation and the initiatives of the school, our classes range from grade R to grade 5, and the learners are aged 5 to 21 years. From grade R to grade 3, we offer DCAPS curriculum as explained by Dr. Esther Costa. We are focusing mainly on languages, mathematics, and life skills. Life skills also include self-help and personal grooming skills, because these are some of the basic skills that young children must be able to master as they grow. For grade 4 and grade 5, we offer DCAPS curriculum, focusing once again on languages, maths, life skills. Life skills also include vocational skills. In the vocational schools, we have, for an example, carpentry, upholstery, gardening, sewing, cooking and baking, and art and crafts. Now, for the period of 3 years, that is starting from age of 18, before learners could exit schooling at the age of 21, the school focuses primarily on skills training only, so that these learners could be equipped with skills to earn a living after their schooling years. Now, the The challenges are as follows. I must honestly state that Readiness Special School has never had buildings of its own since its establishment, that is in 1985. At the current moment, the school is occupying the former Ditego Middle School buildings. These buildings are not conducive for our learners. There is still asbestos roof, which is peeling off, and there is dust that is always produced. Learners and staff are exposed to these hazardous health challenges. The school does not have vocational skills center, for instance, which means effective teaching and learning is adversely affected. There are no proper administration offices, no staff room, no therapeutic center. There are no ablution rooms for both staff and learners, no sporting grounds, no recreation center for foundation phase learners, that is grade R to grade 3. No security fencing at our school, and there is no security room at all. There is no proper kitchen, there is no school hall. Now, the challenges are quite insurmountable, and they are so dire for us to effectively implement all the programs that these learners need. Our recommendations are as follows. The current buildings be demolished and new buildings should be constructed because the current ones are quite cumbersome to work on. The second recommendation is construction of the security fencing, which will also assist us so that when learners at times leave for the toilets, they don't just have to move around the yard because educators now no longer have time to focus much on the children in the class. We have got to check the children so that they must not loiter around. There should also be construction of sporting grounds because our kids in the previous years have demonstrated to have quite capacity in sporting activities. Those are some of the few issues that I may have, and thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That's what we call 5 minutes. I hope the rest of the schools reps will take cue from you. Can we have Itireling School for the severely mentally handicapped? Do you have a rep from the school? Okay. Can we have from Pumla School for the severely mentally handicapped, Pumla School? Arsikheto.
Sikheto.
Okay, Sikheto. Okay.
Yes, Sikheto Rangan.
Okay.
Yes. Can I go on, Chairperson?
Yes, 5 minutes again.
Yes, can I go on, Chairperson? Hello?
Yes, proceed.
All right. Yes, thank you, Chairperson. Our school is an SID school. These are learners generally having an IQ ranging from 50 to 70, an intellectual disability formerly referred to as mentally retardation. It is characterized by a combination of deficits in both cognitive functioning and adaptive behaviors. The labeling of our learners above has too many connotations. So the newer terms that are normally used these days is intellectual disability or developmental disability. For many of our learners, there is no specific known cause of their developmental delays. So a learner is scored 70 or lower and is considered to be an intellectually disabled learner. Then they are referred to an SID school or admitted to an SID school. In our school, we have got 383 learners enrolled, and they start from grade R to grade 5. Now, in terms of our focus, we focus on basic skills, that is saloon, sewing, basic computer, dance, beauty, massage, home economics, arts and culture, and food gardening. With regard to the curriculum that we are offering DCAPs, whereby we have subjects like life skills, mathematics, and English. Now, in terms of the initiatives that we are having now, we have initiated that we must have the exit plans, of which this exit plans focuses mainly on learners who are supposed to exit the school. So we always have programs that are supposed to be followed. And if a learner has achieved the outcomes, is then that we can say the learner can exit the school. We are working with the community, and the way we are working with the community, we try to come up with initiatives, and these initiatives seek to ensure that there is safety and protection in our school. We want to also bring back the culture of sports and educational activities in the schooling environment. We want to also formulate a quicker communication platform and response to break-ins and thefts in our school. And lastly, we want to also ensure that we establish a quarterly school symposium or conference of all stakeholders to participate. Now, we also have challenges, Chairperson. Challenges like we are not having a proper therapy room. We have planned to convert one of our garages so that we can be able to accommodate our therapists. Another challenge is that our SGB, am I still audible, Chairperson?
Hello? Yes, we can hear you. It's just that we don't see your presentation.
Okay, yeah, I forwarded it through Dr. Costa. Maybe it has not been forwarded to yourself. All right, no, it's fine. Let me carry on. SGB is not familiar with their rules, and sometimes they cannot distinguish their roles between governance and management. And it creates a lot of problems when it comes to that. Because sometimes as a principal, when I'm in those kind of meetings of governance, I have to keep on advising. It's difficult to advise people who don't want to adhere to their roles. Sometimes we have a challenge of whereby when learners are supposed to be exiting at the age of 18 or 21, the SGB will want to ensure that the process must not carry on. They don't want their children to exit. And that creates a problem because we have to deal with issues of admission as well. Interference, I think interference of SGB in management of the school, we've indicated that. We have an SGB that is interested in the finances of the school. And I think Dr. Costa has noted that as well. I think the SGB also lacks knowledge on how special schools operate. We tried our best to educate through the district and the head office as well. They also take time to appoint key personnel, such as CS, therapists, and support staff. With regard to recommendations, one would like to recommend that our learners should be certificated when they exit the school. If possible, maybe we can also recommend that they can be referred to FET colleges rather than protective workshops, because at the moment we are focusing on protective workshops. And again, maybe lastly, it will be a recommendation to say, I don't know, maybe it is possible to screen the parents after the SGB elections, so that at least we can have the smooth running of the processes when it comes to governance. I thank you, Chairperson. I hope I did not take your 5 minutes. Hello?
Thank you, Siketo. Thank you so much from Pumla School. Mr. Maluma, Dukatwale Special School. Mr. Maluma? Do you have Mr. Maluma here? Okay, we'll pass. Mr. Dukatwale School? No one. And then can we have Kakula? Yes, Kakula Special School. Hey, let me feel it. Can we have Kakula? Do we have a ref from...
What is the name of this school, sir?
Kakula. Hey, limine libo feeling yana.
It's not Kabula. It's not Kabula. No, I thought it was Kabula school.
Now, Bishop, you are thinking of your counterpart there.
Can we have Kakula? Do we have a rep from Kakula school?
The chair is cackling there. So.
Okay. Okay, we'll move. Okay, we covered Churamu School. Michelle did present. And then can we have the Michelle Petha Bridge? I hope I pronounced correctly.
Thank you. It's Robin Beer here from the Equal Education Law Centre. I'll be presenting on behalf of Michelle, who couldn't be with us this afternoon.
Okay.
So I will quickly put up a very brief PowerPoint presentation just to say the Equal Education Law Centre is a public interest litigation organisation. We work in education, law and policy. We have a legal advice clinic, and we work very closely with our movement partner, Equal Education. We really wanted just to very briefly make the point today that it's very important that when we talk about the support that the GDE should be providing to special schools, we understand the role of special schools within an inclusive education system. You know, as we know from our international and our own domestic obligations, the persons with disabilities have the right to attend their ordinary local public school. That's what it's meant by being part of the general education system. They should be able to receive education on an equal basis with others in the communities where they live, and they should be provided with reasonable accommodation to do so. So what we should be working towards is a system where learners are not only accommodated in special schools, but they are also actually accommodated in their ordinary schools. All of our own policies, the South African Schools Act, CIAS, Education White Paper 6, and the guidelines for special schools all say that admission to a special school should be considered as a last option for a learner and should only be done in cases where reasonable accommodations cannot be made in a local ordinary school. So really what we should be seeing with our special school resource centres is that they are highly specialised. They are equipped with enough specialist staff that they are able to provide an outreach function to schools, families and communities, and particularly to ordinary schools around them who are accommodating learners with disabilities in those schools. So we need to make a very conscious decision and be very intentional about saying that special schools are not the only school that should be accommodating learners with disabilities. And it's very encouraging to hear from previous presenters where their schools are acting as resource centres and they are providing that outreach. And that's definitely what we should be looking towards. But the bottom line is we're not able to provide special schools with the right support if we're not also making sure that our ordinary schools are getting support to include learners with disabilities. Some of the challenges that we have encountered through our law clinic with special schools, and I think that's been reinforced by what many of the schools have spoken about. First and foremost is a failure to implement inclusive education. There will always be too much pressure on special schools and long waiting lists and overcrowding if they are the only schools where learners with disabilities go to. We do not have enough special schools in this country, nor should that be our goal to keep building new special schools. We should be making sure that our ordinary schools are accommodating learners with disabilities and that they are not all referred to special schools. So the challenges are around the admission processes, particularly around resourcing. As we said, special schools as resource centres should have highly specialised staff. So we're looking for therapists, teachers, teacher aides. They should also have access to good LTSM, including assistive devices, technology, which can support not only the learners in their own school, but also surrounding schools, families, and communities. And very importantly, as we have very disturbingly heard by many of the presenters today, infrastructure at some of the special schools is appalling. And you would certainly not consider those to be centers of specialist excellence when they don't even have infrastructure that is passable. So what is the support needed from the GDE? First of all, to provide financial resourcing for ordinary schools, special schools, and special school resources according to the guidelines for resourcing inclusive education. So those guidelines provide guidelines for all provinces to use in order to make sure that not only special schools, but also ordinary schools are properly funded so that they are able to promote inclusive education. And also to build the capacity of the DBSTs to support ordinary schools to include learners with disabilities, and to inform ordinary schools of their duty to provide reasonable accommodations and not to simply refuse admission to the school and refer to a special school. I wanted to just very quickly respond to the school readiness to reopen in light of COVID. And would like to point the committee's attention towards the court case recently there was a court order, a settlement order between the DBE and CCL, which has compelled now the department to develop additional guidelines for all categories of disabilities that all schools, whether they are ordinary full service or special schools, follow in order to make sure that learners are adequately protected. We know that when it comes to provisioning of PPEs, etc., schools that accommodate learners with disabilities cannot be provided with the same PPEs as ordinary schools. They need additional and more specifically adapted PPE, and that must be in accordance with the guidelines. The DBE directions also now will be amended to make provision for adequate support to learn at home, which includes therapeutic services and assistive devices. And it also importantly places an obligation on the DBE to make sure that there is temporary infrastructure provided where alternatives like rotational systems in hostels are not appropriate for learners. So we just wanted to please draw the committee's attention to this court order in order to make sure that the GDE will be abiding by it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. From Equal Education, can we have Juliet Carter from Autism SA?
Hi, it's Vicky Lam from Autism South Africa. Unfortunately, Juliet can't join us at the moment, so I will be presenting on her behalf.
Okay, you can proceed.
Thank you. Cool. All right, so this is Team Autism South Africa, and just to quickly give you a brief overview, we have our National Director, who is Juliet Carter, and underneath her is myself, Vicky, as well as our Finance and Resource Development, Claudia Sarisa, and underneath that we have Regional Development Officers, as well as admin and a counsellor. We are involved in advocacy in terms of organising, as well as educating the public, legislators, government, all different levels. We try and facilitate and support autism research across the country, and we're involved in a number of projects as well with the Centre for Autism Research in Africa, which is based at UCT. And we gather, network, share information and resources. Our website is comprised of a number of free resources available for professionals, for families, and for autistic people themselves. Promote and facilitate self-advocacy as well within the community. We work in the lobbying sector. One of our big things that we do is training. So we run a professional workshop. We are also involved in parent training, and we work with other autism organizations across the country as well to get training happening and information out there about autism. So our training courses, our big one is our hands-on autism workshop, which covers the following topics: typical development, autism, the legal framework and policies in South Africa. So that looks at things like the white paper for the rights of people with disabilities. It also looks at all the different, the CS documents and a whole lot of different documents. We look at the different curriculums that are covered and that are available, how to work with me, are strategies to work with the autistic learner in the classroom. We look at communication, behavior that challenges, sensory, and also working with parents. A number of presenters have mentioned that caregivers and parents are very important. And when working with any child with a disability, or any child for that matter, it's very important that we're able to work with those parents as well. And wellness for the professional, because in this profession, in the special needs or ELSIN profession, the burnout rate is exceptionally high. We do support as well for from individual cradle to grave is kind of the approach that we take. Also for the family, and that goes right from diagnosis through to schooling, through to transitioning from school into post-education or the workplace, and we work across the board of the spectrum. So from low support through to high support. And within the community, we do emotional empowerment, self-advocacy, education, as well as vocational. Some of the challenges that we have seen is that there's not enough knowledge on autism, and that goes right throughout from community to government level to everybody. There's still a lot of discrimination and stigmatization of autism. We still see a lot of negative attitudes. It's been mentioned there's not enough schools, and this is whether it's inclusive or special schools. We often face a lot of trouble with that, and this is also national for us though. Not enough therapists, which has been brought up as well. Not enough trained staff to support both learners in school as well as their parents and families. So often we find that even when our kids are placed in an autism-specific school, the staff have not been equipped to support the learners and their families. And then we have, unfortunately, had cases of abuse in schools. Support for low support learners also needs to be intensified in mainstream environments or in ordinary schools, because those kids are really struggling as well. So some of the things that we would like to see are more early intervention, and the projects that we're currently involved in are Autism Navigator, which is a very exciting early intervention program. I'm not going to go into too much detail about this. Also the WHO, which is the World Health Organization, we are involved there with a caregiver skills training program that's in pilot phasing, being tested in the Northwest Province at the moment. And we also have recently done a whole lot of ECD staff training in the Eastern Cape. We would like to see more inclusive school environments, as I mentioned earlier, catering to all support levels, not just to the kids with high to moderate support needs, but also the low support needs, those kids that are sitting in ordinary schools, for staff to receive training on autism, as well as exposure to the autistic community. And thanks goes to all the schools that are acting as resource centers and doing training as well. That's really, really great to hear. And also a multidisciplinary approach to autism in school and during school placement as well. We'd also like to see parents receiving more support, so support groups, counseling, but also parent empowerment through training, and support of this goes on later on. So transitioning from the school into the workplace, what transitions are in place? Are these young adults who are leaving school, do they have the ability to ask for reasonable accommodations? Are they ready for the workplace? Is the workplace ready for them? All of that. And just because we do focus on a cradle to grave approach, we also are looking at the care of the aged autistic adult. So essentially, our goal is a meaningful quality of life for all autistic people. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can we get our last one from South African Principal Association, Mr. Hlongwane? Mr. Hlongwane? We don't have Mr. Hlongwane, Mr. Hlongwane, Thomas Hlongwane. Okay. Okay, it means we don't have Hlongwane here.
Honorable
Which one?
Chairperson,
Okay.
my name is Jayesh Naya. I'm from Blind SA. We also sent in a request to do a presentation.
Okay. Yeah. I don't have it here, but nevertheless, I can give you that opportunity because Hlongwane is not here. Yes, we can proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson and members of the Portfolio Committee and officials of the department. My colleague Susan and I will very briefly provide you details. Blind SA is a national disabled people's organization that largely looks at advocacy, awareness raising, and looking at self-representation of blind and partially sighted persons. My colleague Susan Bam will highlight to you the problem we experience and particularly the challenges on early childhood development. Susan? Chair, I think we're having a technical problem.
No, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, so I just wanted to highlight that many of the problems that we identified have been there prior to the COVID pandemic, and had these issues been attended to timeously, we'd find that we would have been in a better position to cope with blind and partially sighted learners during the COVID period, and particularly post-COVID. In terms of early childhood development, apart from Prince of School that provides programs for early childhood development, there is no facility for early childhood development for blind and partially sighted children in the province. Therefore, many of the learners are going to school very much later in life. There is a need for the department to institute ECD programs so that children can benefit from early onset of identification of blindness. I want to focus on the next slide, which talks to the learner-teacher support, the children out of school. Children out of school, the Human Rights Watch report and the Department of Basic Education report indicates that there are over 500,000 children with disabilities who should be at school and who are not at school. We have identified a number of blind learners in Gauteng who are not at school, and we find that the parents, because of poverty, do not want to send their children to school so that they utilize the child support and the disability grant to support the families at home. We also find that because of stigmatization due to cultural reasons, children are kept at home and not sent to school. So there is a need for greater awareness raising amongst parents to ensure that their children attend school. Then I want to focus on the learner-teacher support material. We find that there's a lack of accessible CAPS textbooks, prescribed book readers, and library schools in accessible formats, in Braille, in DAISY, in audio, and in large print. Many of our children are sharing their books. Educators and other staff are making notes and trying to convert that into Braille for our learners. Learners do not have the essential braille writing machine, which is like a pen to sighted people. In some classes, one machine is being shared amongst 3 or 4 children. Similarly, children with partial sight, low vision, do not have magnifiers or other electronic devices to help them cope in the environment. I want to move on to the next slide, which focuses on the hostel. You'd find that there are poor infrastructure at the hostels. Last year, the Department of Labor issued a prohibition notice at Prince of School for unsafe steps, and the school had to close down over 21 classrooms because the learners would not have access to go upstairs. The electrical works at the school was unsafe and also deemed to be not in compliance with standards. The hostels during the COVID period, because of social distancing, now becomes overcrowded. The schools are not able to accommodate all the learners in the school hostels, and therefore we've been informed by the schools that at least 50% of the learners may not be returning to school from next week onwards. At these hostels, you find that the financial resources provided to maintain the learners at these hostels have not been substantially improved over the last 5 years. And on average, the schools are spending between 27 Rand and about 35 Rand a day to provide breakfast, lunch, supper, as well as teas for each learner. And you'd know that to provide those kind of meals for one child at 35 Rand a day is not practical. So there is a need to look at how can the special schools also benefit from the nutrition program and increase funding. In terms of public transport, the special schools are not benefiting from the learner transport policy. I find that in some districts, the Department of Transport coordinates learner transport, whilst in other areas, the Department of Education is controlling learner transport. We find that many of the learners come from low economic backgrounds and therefore find it very difficult for the learners to go home at the beginning and end of at the end of term and to return at the beginning of term. At Prince of, the school hostels are closed over weekends, and therefore children have to go home on a Friday and return on a Sunday. And organizations like Blind SA is trying to provide some support to some parents so that their children can come home on a regular basis. We therefore support the call by Equal Education that our children should be at their local schools so that there could be social integration. By being in a residential environment, it creates automatic social distancing and social isolation. Orientation and mobility is a important...
Mr. Ne?
Just two more slides, sir. 2 more slides.
Okay.
Okay. Orientation and mobility is an important life skills. Staff at the schools, educators need to be taught on how they should guide blind and partially sighted children using sighted guide techniques. Our children should be taught how to use the white cane so that they could walk independently, and they should be taught skills of daily living. Unfortunately, because they were not taught these things, the impact of social distancing and during COVID is having an impact. In terms of recommendations, We believe that the Department of Education and the Portfolio Committee should look at setting up special task teams to include parents, civil society organizations, and the schools so that we could maybe address some of the shortcomings that currently exist. There should be increased funding to ensure that additional PPEs and furnished classrooms, furnished mobile classrooms, furnished mobile hostel facilities are provided for our learners. We thank you for giving us this opportunity, and we believe it's important that the Portfolio Committee should do on-site inspections at some of these schools so that you would have a better opportunity of understanding the poor infrastructure that exists there, the unequal education that's provided to our learners, and that you would try to ensure that these issues are taken up seriously with the Department of Education. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Neff. I think that should really bring us to the end of the presentations, because we've been we've been on the presentation for quite some time. So those two presentations that we couldn't get, it's fine. I don't think they'll really affect our meeting going forward. So now this brings us to the item where there's questions and discussions. I think Mr. Nair had, if he was came in towards the end, I was.
Sorry
yes,
to interrupt you. I see Isabeleni else in school has their hand up. I just wasn't sure if you had seen it.
Okay, let me check. I don't think I've seen it. Oh, yes, it's up. Okay, thank you so much. Isabeleni else in school?
I was requesting that we could just have a 5 minutes presentation for our school, if it's possible.
Okay. And then I've got two videos of yourself, Isabeleni and Malungana. Can Malungana switch off your video, because it generally disrupts the feed. So if everybody got the video on except Isabeleni, can it be off? Because as you can see, mine is also off. Yeah, for better connectivity. Okay. Let me give you 5 minutes, and you are the last one. Because I have a program, but I understand I've been to Isabeleni and I know your challenges, so it will be good to present it. Okay. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, sir.
And go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, all protocol observed. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Tabang Dagata, principal of the Isabeleni School in Katlehong. We forwarded our presentation. If possible, it could be listed there. The school, it's a school that provides grade R to grade 9 CAPS curriculum. And then we also have DCAPS curriculum from grade R up to year 3. And we offer skills such as pottery, cooking, metalwork, art, sewing, and garden. We also offer inclusive education to all learners that are physically disabled. We cater for mostly CPs, muscular dystrophy, and those kids that are living with a physical disability also have mild to intellectual and severe intellectual disabilities. We've got the medical department, which includes occupational therapists, audiologists, speech, physio, social worker, nurses, and we also have our support staff, teachers and management. The boarding school caters for 80 learners into the greater Johannesburg, and we also have scholar transport, which caters for 120 learners for the whole of Ekurhuleni South. We also offer an outreach program where we educate, support stimulation centers around us, crèches, and we also offer education on the usage of devices with the support of our therapy department. We offer awareness program into the community and the parents that are having, and we are also networking with the NGOs that are relating to people with disabilities. We are also a resource center where we help a lot in the district for type of disabilities where children cannot hear well or cannot write and whatever. So our therapy department also offer outreach to the schools within the district, and we are a resource also to the district. We also have 8 brigades that are allocated for now under the COVID, and then we have bought school buses with the support of the Department of Education between 2018 and 2019. We have enough PPEs, and with our SGB also has added into that. Since the COVID, we had a lot of children that are having comorbidity and they were unable to come to the school. So we have managed to do what we call a weekly homework program where our drivers are delivering the food parcels together with the work. And then we have a delivery note in order to indicate that the parents did receive the food parcel and also the homework. We have a diary in which we communicate between the school and the parents for if there are any other form of challenges. And then we also had learnerships for the children that have finished their grade 9s and also their vocational skills, where we had a learnership at school hosted. The challenges that we are having was that our school was built on a dolomitic land, and our hostel, the old hostel, has been closed, and then the hostel was converted. Classes were converted into dormitories. So we are having a challenge there because that minimized the enrollment of the school, but also the place that was closed, the hawkers and people, they are vandalizing the school. So we have currently leaking roofs, falling ceilings, loose tiles, cracking of walls and dormitories. So even the dolomite has moved to the upper section of the school. We are having a problem with the security because we are surrounded with an informal settlement around us. They are destroying the school, the fence, and also we are not allocated CPF, so there's regular burglaries that are happening to the school. We also have challenges with the staffing. The staff allocation that we are given by the district does not amount to the type of learners that are highly dependent on other people. So we have insufficient housekeepers. We only allocated 2 drivers, but our vehicles are 4. And then we're also running short of class aiders. So we're using the parent school fees, hostel, shortages of bathrooms, toilet and laboratories, especially with the COVID, because we have to do social distancing in the bathrooms, in the beds, in everything. So it actually maximized the problem of our infrastructure. We've introduced another stream of curriculum, which is DCAPS, but unfortunately when it was introduced, our school was left behind because we are a school catering for CAPS, and until we informed our district and head office and were included, but we missed the actual training. We also have 3 vehicles that are accommodating learners with disability. But the challenge is that on the vehicles that we have bought, they are not inclusive for people with disability. They don't have lifts, and the ones that need lifts are more expensive. And then we've got the reluctancy of parents to pay school fees and boarding, but with the COVID issue, they've moved further. The way forwards that we are suggesting to you, our seniors, is that we need a new school to be built, which meets the requirement of inclusive education and caters for learners which are physically challenged. We need also an in-depth training on the DCAPS curriculum, since those children that are physically challenged also in the same breath, they also have intellectual disabilities, mild to severe. We also needed the provision for class aiders, as our class aiders are not enough, and housekeepers and drivers. With the COVID, it's more because there is a close contact between the learner and the keeper. And then the parents also not paying school fees. I think that we need a little bit of awareness. And then we have we needed a short-term, in the short-term resources, we need a mobile classes to cater for the toilets and the classes. Thank you, sir. I'm done.
No, thank you so much. Thank you, Isbeleni. Thank you, Principal.
Thank you, sir.
Honorable members, it's your opportunity now to have questions, discussions from the presentations, comments from yourselves. This is how we're going to do it. It's going to be honorable members first, then we're going to have there's Thomas Kasimilan. Thomas, your hand is always up. And if it's about a presentation, I'm not taking it. Okay? Thomas? Yeah, we can hear you, but you sound far from the mic. We can't hear you. Can you be closer to the speaker?
Right, or can you hear me now? Better? Can I continue?
Okay.
Chair,
Yeah,
we can't hear the speaker.
Yeah, no,
It's very soft.
Okay, is it better now?
Yeah, it's slightly, but you can speak. Yes.
Best. I wonder. I think it's better now. So let me not go for the presentation. Just few points that needs their attention, Chair. It ranges to a number across a number of presentations, but it speaks specifically to the School for Visually Impaired Persons. It's Thomas Mullen from National Council for the Blind. And remember, our key role is to work with the department in helping. We do a lot of.
Chairperson, we can't hear. We really can't hear, honestly.
Thomas.
Yes.
Thomas, I said if it's a presentation, we don't want a presentation. But if it's a comment, okay.
Chairperson, can I make a proposal?
Yeah.
Perhaps Thomas can type in the chat box, because if we're being honest, we can't actually hear him. So I don't know how we're going to even respond, you know?
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Honorable Son. Thomas, can you rather use the chat box and write down what you want to say, because we really can't hear you. All right. Thank you so much. Okay. All right, honorable members, back to yourselves now. I can see Honorable Hassan, Honorable Makubela, Honorable Ramulifo. Honorable Hassan, you can start.
Thank you, Chair. I think let me first start by appreciating all of the stakeholders who have taken time. I think someone's not muted. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so I just want to start by acknowledging and appreciating all of our stakeholders who've come through today to make presentations. I know, sometimes it's not easy to take out such time from one's diary, so I really appreciate that. And it gives us, as MPLs, as public representatives, a good idea of what's going on the ground, especially because a lot of our oversight work has had to be, put on the back seat. But I think in terms of what I've heard and what I want to make comment on is very much similar to what all the presenters actually mentioned, and that is around infrastructure. And I want to start by telling our stakeholders in the different schools represented here, this is something that we have not just picked up on, but we're fighting very hard about. And we're fighting very hard because we've come to some schools that are represented here, but I think we're starting to see on the ground just how there's a crisis of infrastructure in the province, but it's particularly acute for special schools. So it's something that we knew and we know about even before today, but I think today's really emphasized it and it's really put it into context. And it's something where we are looking at a more systemic and a more structural way to address it, because we can't be put back years in progress because of the inability of the infrastructure department to meet its mandate and to meet its ability to perform. So that's something we are really, really keeping in mind, and I'm very glad to hear it. And maybe, Chairperson, we need to create a bit of a sort of audit process of our own, where we then track and check the timelines of when things were meant to be built and when things were meant to be maintained. And then we have a separate meeting with the infrastructure unit, both within DBE as well as with the infrastructure development department. But that's something we are working on internally, and we're also working on internally as a portfolio committee with the infrastructure portfolio committee, because this is something that we have picked up in as well. I also want to emphasize and appreciate the point around inclusive learning, which is also something all of the stakeholders have spoken about, that it's not just about having the right infrastructure. It's not just about having the right teachers. It's about having a holistic process that really, from the moment a learner comes in to the moment they leave, and this goes for teachers and staff as well, there's this far more inclusive and holistic approach. And I think that's also something we are considering. And if I could, Chair, just to add in, one of the things I've been thinking about, I have proposed it once, but I think I'm going to do a little bit more research on it. And that is around how we link university graduates, particularly those in psychology, particularly those in occupational therapy, et cetera, ones with the skills that are really needed in these schools, and see how if we can't link up with universities to try and ensure that we have a steady stream of that skill. We employing young people on one side, or we're giving them an opportunity and job experience on one side, but then we're also ensuring that our schools are looked after. So that's something that I think we also need to think about. And yes, I think I don't want to, I'm sure we've been taking notes and we've also been pushing along. And a lot of the things that I think we have to say and we have to put forward is probably more towards the department and more probably towards the implementing agent, which for us is the infrastructure development department. But other than that, I want to thank everybody. And I just want to say, this is our first virtual stakeholder engagement, and I hope it won't be our last, and that we're in this process together. And we're hopefully, we're going to push very hard, and we have been pushing very hard on the question of infrastructure. But I think that's it for now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Hassan. Honorable Mapuvela.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. I think mine will be very short. I think listening to all the stakeholders speaking, you realize that we need to urgently move to speak in the House and bring back a portfolio committee on GOD that will specifically deal with all these issues that are being raised. And I think we must also impress on the department that they must have a division that deal with special schools, so that we are able to then zoom into the challenges that they are facing, to then speedily begin to deal with all those challenges, and to give them the attention that they deserve. Because I believe that if ever we treat all the schools in the province in the same way, you will have a serious challenge. Because if you put them in the same basket, you have a serious challenge. Then we leave others behind. It's quite clear, Chairperson, and I think we must also thank you that you are having an engagement of this nature that looks into this issue. Because listening to stakeholders, you hear the pertinent issues that they are raising regarding this issue. And these are things that we have not looked at. We have not looked at how COVID has affected learners with disabilities and so forth. So I think that we need to push in the House for the reintroduction of GOD. And we also need to impress on the department that there must be a division of highly specialized individuals, people who have experience in working in special schools and so forth, who can come and give expert professional services to the department and also to the people of Gauteng on how to better cater for these schools. Because as so far what we are doing is piecemeal. We are not paying a detailed attention to what we ought to do. That's my contribution. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much, Honorable Mapuvela. Can we have Honorable Ramulifo?
Please note me, Chairperson.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, noted.
Yeah.
Honorable Ramlife, you are next.
Oh, thank you, Chairperson, and also appreciate the presentations being made. I want to just check whether, I mean, is the department driving sort of a targeted campaign to ensure that, all learners will return back so that we don't just have empty schools when the time, for them to go back is open. As the department, are there learners with disabilities who are recruited, as youth brigades, as we talk about, especially those who either exited the system, so that at least we know we are paying attention to them too, those who can, that they can also be roped in and also work in a process where we know we're accommodating them as employees. That's one aspect. And then is there an update regarding Noctula Elsen? I mean, as we know, we listen to a number of challenges raised here. And that then raises questions to say we've got best facilities which we know we are not using it fully. And I'm of the view that some of the challenges which have been identified, that school was designed to actually deal with it. But at this point of time, we can't actually say that is what the school is actually currently serving. And the illegal or unregistered schools, are there any, interventions which, are being put in place so that we can be able to, deal with schools continuing? Or I'm not sure whether it's the same approach with, your public ordinary schools when it comes to the intervention of dealing with this challenge. And lastly, regarding the waiting list, I just want to understand whether, how often the department update the list in terms of learners who are on the waiting list, or whether there is a research which then get conducted to confirm the number of learners who are on the waiting list. And then if that is the case, how do we ensure that, and as part of the intervention, either through the full service schools, that then becomes another mechanism of trying to absorb some of the learners who can be absorbed through that process, and also either building of new schools or extending the schools which are in existence, so that we can try to accommodate, so that we don't have learners who are waiting or sitting at home, not because they want to, but due to the fact that there's not enough space. And maybe also look at if there's a link with social development, especially for children who are on disability grants, just to be able to ascertain where can they be linked with the educational system in the process, just to get that understanding, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Ramlife. Can we have Honorable Adams?
Thank you so much, Chairperson. Let me appreciate and thank all the presenters. I must be honest with you, Chairperson, I am really, really taken aback. I am tremendously impressed. When I listen, I think most of my colleagues, the members, has already covered some issues that I wanted to talk about. Safe to say, Chairperson, that this is an absolute calling. It can't be just a teacher-student relationship. It has to be somebody who has a passion. And I want to commend all our educators in all our schools that takes the time to fend, to defend, to nurture, to capacitate our children who have special needs. So my contribution, Chairperson, is just a big thank you. I know that there's many challenges that they have, and I agree with my honorable members that we must try and do much more. We must prioritize these schools actually. So, but from my side, Chairperson, all I want to say is may God continue to bless them. May God continue to strengthen them in the work that they do. because their work is an absolute calling. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Honorable Adams. Honorable PC, I've got the hand of Jesslyn Craig. I don't know who's Jesslyn Craig.
Good afternoon to all the honourable members. I'm Jacqueline Craig. I am the chairperson of the school-based occupational therapy group from UTASA, which is the Occupational Therapy Association of South Africa. I really want to thank you for this opportunity, and as someone mentioned before, we hope that this is not the first and the last virtual engagement, as we've seen what a vital role special schools play in our society. I just have a few points to mention, and in terms of the infrastructure, I really think that, and I think it's a very important viewpoint that someone mentioned. A committee should be formed specifically for infrastructure, but that highly specialized individuals should be part of that committee, such as us as occupational therapists, or as any other therapists, or as any other people, structural engineers that form part of this, that actually have knowledge of what the schooling should look like in terms of accessibility for all learners with disabilities, as well as all the ergonomical principles to be used, and all the correct things that should be in place to ensure the safety and to ensure the accessibility of each school for all the learners with disabilities. And then I also just think that we really, really need to emphasize, and it's a very big area that is not, that isn't taken always into account, is the exit plan for these learners. The school to work transition is vital. And I think we really need to consider this and look at all the avenues of how we can ensure that all learners with disabilities get an equal opportunity for employment after leaving school. And then I'd just like to address a question to Dr. Costa. In terms of the PPE that was provided to all the special schools, I just want to know, was it different to the PPE that was provided to normal schools, or was each special school looked at and their PPE adjusted accordingly?
Okay. Thank you. Is it Jacqueline?
It's Jacqueline, that's correct. Thank you.
Jacqueline, okay. You hijacked me a bit, but I just did not disturb you. Thank you for that positive contribution. The department will respond, is on hand to respond. Honorable Mpisi, are you done, Jacqueline?
I'm done. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Okay. Honorable Mpisi?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. And thanks very much to
Honorable Mpisi, perhaps maybe switch off the video feed. Honorable Mpisi, I think we're
information. And I think, Chair, I will also make a. No, I'm here. Can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, okay. Yes, you can see.
I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you. Can proceed.
Yeah, no, I'm saying that I appreciate the presentations, Chair. And I think I want us to also go back as the portfolio committee to the recommendations that we have made in the 5th administration on this particular FIS. I think it's something that we must appreciate. And one of the things that are common that are coming out of this engagement is the issue of infrastructure and the population growth that we are having in Gauteng, which the current infrastructure that we are having is not actually equal to the task to accommodate as many learners as possible into these particular institutions. And I think it's something that I think we must recommend. And I know that MEC Lisufi is passionate about autism, is passionate about schools of specialization, and is also passionate about these particular institutions that we're dealing with now. That I think we must go back, Chair, and I want to recommend that you know that we have done a lot of work in making sure that we recommend that some of the schools need to be expanded. Additional classrooms and space need to be added to some of the schools. And I also want to agree with equal education. You see, I think one of the things that we must do is not to always politicize education. We must be able to say how best do we work together with an organization like Equal Education to make sure that at least we respond positively to the needs that are needed there, particularly in this particular area of our sector. And I think it's one thing that I think we need to do. And I want to commend you, Chair, for making sure that we focus today on this particular matter. One of the key things that I think we also need to also look at is the additional support staff that we need. I know that we may be demanding too much, but I think if we are to achieve a best outcome in this particular area, I think some of the schools, they don't have support teachers, they don't have support staff that are assisting the teachers and so on, what you call the assistant teachers in various schools. We need that. But we also need to advocate for more schools like Nokuthula in our province. It is something that we must do. Remember, Nokuthula came into being built because of our intervention as the portfolio committee. It is us who made it a point that Nokuthula is built for the learners who were cramped in a building in Alexander. And I think we need to do that again with the school here in Katlehong. I think I've visited that school twice, and I know, Chair, that that school is currently sitting on a dolomatic land. And I think the sooner we move those learners and build them a new school, the similar school like Nokuthula, here in Ekurhuleni, I think would have done justice to these particular young people. And I think it's something that I think I want to recommend, but also focus into other areas of our province, like your valley. I know the valley is bloated with learners who are sitting at home because there's no space in the school. And I think we need exactly the same infrastructure like Nokuthula in those particular areas. So for me, Chair, it is something that the department should take note of. I think in the next financial year, I think the budget must talk to this issue. It's unfortunate now that we're being paralyzed by COVID-19, but I think that going forward, we'll be able to find a better way of responding to these particular challenges. And I thank all the presenters for presenting well and availing themselves to come and share with us these particular issues that they've shared with us. And I think in us, Chairperson, we must assure them they have they have some people that are elected who are actually putting this particular sector of disabled learners into our hearts. And I think we have to do something before our term ends, Chair. And I think the department must put aside a significant budget. And I know the MSc is listening, and I know that you will take cognizance of this issue. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Honorable BC. I think honorable members have covered much of the ground. Before I would give to the department to say something, before I give the department to say something, I think one issue that I would want to add is that I think we need to zoom into the SGBs in the schools, because quite a number of presenters have raised concerns about the conduct of SGBs. and it is an issue and something that we need to look into. Obviously, we'll have future engagement with the SGB bodies. They made a lot of them, because I know there's quite a number of them. And a key issue was raised around the LTSM. The type of material that we give, that the department gives, rather, to these schools, the type of support material that they give to the schools needs to be looked at closely. And there was an issue raised about the skilling and the support for the teachers, the educators, the skilling and reskilling and recapacitating of the educators is an issue that has been raised, and I think the department needs to find a way of addressing that issue, because you can't assume that since they've been taught as they arrive, then they'll learn on the job. It's not correct. There must be a support, and the reality is that the world is moving towards it's moving towards digital teaching. So it is important that, especially a province like Gauteng, it must not find itself wanting. It must not find itself chasing the pack. We must be amongst the best. Not only in the country, but competing with amongst the best in the world. And we are capable. So we need to, there needs to be a closer look into how do we move, especially in special schools, how do we move in that direction? I can't overemphasize the infrastructure. I think one of members have said it all. It's a battle. I like how Honorable Hassan has coined it. It's a battle. It's a battle, but it cannot not be. It can't be left. We must win it, and this brings a sense of agency as well. I saw DDG Ntsubi is here. I believe is currently acting and responsible for infrastructure work in the department, and is listening. That we can't overemphasize the infrastructure issue. It's not a matter that can just be. We need to find a way of incubating it and giving it a greater attention. Greater attention. The chief director is Hudson is also here. Should be here. Attention. In fact, Honorable Ramulif is putting correct. We need new schools. Where infrastructure has collapsed, we need to build more Noctulas. As much as we're waiting for feedback for Noctula, and it's long overdue. Honestly, I don't like to hear that name Noctula in a manner that I'm hearing it as to what is happening. I'd rather hear this is the progress, this is how many learners the school is operating efficiently. That's how I want to hear the name Noctula, not in the current manner that I keep on hearing about it. And critical is the waiting list. I think Honorable Ramulif touched on it. We should get a proper feedback as to what is happening with it. We saw in the media a few months back, it did find prominence, and it is a problem. Our members have also spoken about it, that there are children that are still loitering at home because there's no space. And some end up being subjected to normal schools in which it really affects their progress, because you find them, they can't even progress. So the waiting list issue must be addressed. There has been progress, I must say, but we must not end at the progress. We want beyond that progress. We want an elimination of the waiting period. But all the members did cover everything else. I don't want to repeat what they've said. DDG Cheney, DDG Albert.
Thank you, Chair. I think a lot of the inputs that were made from the committee members were very informative to assist us, but I think they were mainly comments. I'm going to ask the other DDGs to address some of the specific issues that have been raised. I think if DDG
Okay, I think we are lost.
So
Oh, you're back.
I'm back again. Yes.
Okay. Okay, you can continue. You were saying?
Oh, DDG Ellison wants to respond.
Okay. DDG Ellison?
Thank you so much, Chairperson and colleagues. I will try to respond to some of the questions and inputs, and Dr. Costa will also assist with some of the more specific information. Just to say that in respect of the youth, in respect of the youth brigades, we did request that they allow us to have a special category criteria in terms of engaging the youth brigade. So many of the youth brigades are ex-learners. We asked for approximately 700 and many have been appointed. So we did look at that with the DDG responsible to say that we want to have learners that would have come from the schools or would have an understanding of the community that they are supporting. With respect to the waiting list, we update the waiting list monthly, and the learners in the interim, we provide support for them in their current school. So they supported in either special classes or in the full service schools. The department has a directorate specifically that deals with inclusion and special schools. So Dr. Costa heads that directorate, and they have a staff complement of about 25 staff with 35 additional members specifically employed through the conditional grant. But we know that there are some areas of challenges that we have, because we do need to have a cohort of facilitators that would, excuse me, deal with the curriculum related matters, because the curriculum section in the department mainly deals with curriculum in public ordinary schools. So that is something that we are working on as a department, but in the main, Dr. Costa and her team supports as much as possible together with other stakeholders in respect of curriculum and DBE, of course, as well. And also just to say that each district has got an ISS component as well to support schools. We also provide what we call CS training that takes place specifically, continuously in public ordinary schools to enhance greater inclusivity and accommodation. And we obviously would need to continue to deepen their training for all of our educators in those schools. This CS is just to explain, it's screening, identification, assessment, and support. So that is what they in the mainstream schools to promote inclusivity. We do that kind of training with our teachers. We have 3 replacement schools in planning. what we've done is we've done an audit of all of the schools, and that audit, where it affects particular sections in the department, we request them to then assist us. So the audit would have covered issues of infrastructure, it would have covered issues of curriculum, etc. And then that's why we are able to say that there are 3 replacement schools that are in planning. My understanding is that those 3 are, one is in Springs, one is in Carltonville, and another in Kagiso. Dr. Costa will correct me if I am wrong. So we have what we call it's a quarterly school readiness tool that all of the schools and the district officials need to fill in, and that's where we are able to keep track of what's going on in each of the schools. And of course, we also do continued skilling through the CETA. There's quite a bit of training that we provide as well. Thank you. I would ask Dr. Costa to perhaps add on to the inputs that I've made, with your permission, Chairperson.
Okay, Dr. Costa.
Thank you, Chairperson. I would just like to add, in terms of the question regarding the PPEs for therapists and for educators and support staff in special schools. I think in terms of the therapists, we have complied with requirements stated by HPCSA to say that we must provide in accordance with the risk. And that is where we follow the directive from the Department of Health. Whatever the Department of Health issued to their frontline workers and medical staff or therapists in the hospitals, we also issue. It comprises much more than is offered at the public ordinary school levels for obvious reasons. For instance, to deal with drooling, to deal with physical handling of learners, things like plastic aprons, it's a general feature in a special school. Face shields with masks is a general feature. And then also all the processes in dealing with medical waste that has increased, that is also being dealt with. I think given that this focus of today was on special schools, I did not present that much on our efforts for inclusivity. That can happen on another stage. But to assure you that, just to give you one of the indicators, in Gauteng, mostly in our public ordinary schools, this year, about 8,000 matriculants will be receiving accommodations to equal the playing field when writing their matric exams. So we do make effort to support learners in mainstream, not at all where we would also like it to be, but the effort is definitely there. The continued CS training has all related elements, and even one of the performance indicators, and DDG Albert can refer to it, relates to the level of understanding of inclusive education in public ordinary schools. Thank you very much.
Thank you. DDG Albert?
Chair, maybe just to bring to the notice of the committee that our review of even this issue of inclusive education is being looked at nationally. We have temporarily, together with DB or DBS, initiated a temporary suspension on what we call full service schools as a definition, simply because there has been an unequal development of the standards in those schools. And we are now currently redetermining those particular standards to look at an inclusive system. The main issue and the bottom line of what we would want to get to ultimately is where there is a need for constant multidisciplinary support of learners. It is only in that instant that learners should be in a special facility. Where learners have got moderate, mild, and some kind of severe disabilities that are manageable in public ordinary schools, then they would be included in schools that are called full service schools. and obviously they would then be supported from the resource schools. I think if the committee allows at some point, I think we would present our inclusion strategy to supplement the special school strategy. The key issues, maybe just 4 points very quickly. One, I think we take note of Member MPC's point. I think DDG Ellison spoke about the audit that we had done with special schools. That was in response to the recommendation of the 5th Administration FIS on special schools. Two, I think the issue of therapists and psychologists is a big issue, and I need to explain why. Therapists and psychologists in schools are employed under the Employment of Educator Act, and they are employed on the educator scales. And it is very difficult to recruit what is scarce skills to work in all the schools unless they're highly committed to the education sector. And what usually happens is that you will find that a lot of therapists and psychologists opt to become HR practitioners in companies, which is much more lucrative, or go into private practice. And so we have requested that the National Department look into the salaries to make it much more attractive towards therapists and psychologists, because even in our district offices, we have got vacancies for therapists and psychologists in the district-based support teams. And I think to some extent, we are trying to deal with those specific aspects. Three, I think we are still trying to get the national department. LSEN schools, as we speak right now, do not have national norms and standards for school funding. And I think to a large extent, Gauteng at this point in time, and the last analysis that we did, is the highest funding province per LSEN learner on a per capita. And I think to a large extent, it is about how do you refine that budget and supplement that budget to deal.
I think we've lost DDG Cheney. Let's give him a moment. Okay.
I'm back actually, sorry, Chair, I'm in the office. The last point on qualifications is that the last review that we undertook, which was sometime early last year, there is no primary qualification for teachers to specialize in supporting learners with special needs. It is usually a secondary certificate that comes in after they have got a primary qualification. And it is something that we're looking at. So in most cases, even at an executive level at schools principals, you will find that a large number of principals have got management experience in ordinary schools and have been appointed in special schools. And in a way, we need to tighten up on a whole lot of provisions around the pre-service training of educators to deal with LSEN. And so very often, and then obviously in the Employment of Educators Act, a principal from any or deputy principal from any school can apply to be a principal of a special school. So in the future, we are working with DBE to try and create a specialist stream to make sure that great expertise is created from a management level down in trying to deal with that. Chairperson, I thought it was important to just bring some of the policy issues that still need to be addressed in this particular sector as well. Thank you. I think on that note, unless DDG Nsobi wants to deal with the issue of Nokutula or Hudson, I think we would be fine.
Thank you, DDG Chen. They must say something. Okay. DDG Nsobi, your hand is up.
No, thanks so much, Chairperson. Chairperson, good afternoon, honorable members colleagues, as well as colleagues from Elson schools. Chairperson, firstly, we would like to be given an opportunity to bring a report on all Elson projects together with the progress thereof. With regard to Nokuthula, firstly, Chair, we must confirm to the portfolio committee that based on the last resolutions that were taken, both MECs have convened meetings between the two departments, and we've had to deal with this matter. A contractor is appointed because the major issue there was stormwater. So the contractor is appointed. The contractor that was on site was terminated. We have appointed a contractor. The temporary occupancy certificate is valid until the 6th of January 2021, but we are not working on that. Our target is to ensure that we complete this work in this quarter, and so that we get a permanent certificate to this effect. We can't be waiting for January. But the progress that we want to give with regard to Nokuthula is that the contractor is on site, and City of Joburg should be able to grant a permanent certificate after this work has been assessed. Thanks, Chairperson.
Okay, thank you, DDG Nzovi. I think we'll wait for your full comprehensive report on Nokuthula property and all other infrastructure programs in place, projects that you are undertaking, and also noting what was raised by the schools, the schools present today, stakeholders. They've raised some quite fundamental issues with regard to infrastructure, and I think that noting what DDG Albert is saying, that you need to go to the schools and really begin to address the infrastructure concerns. All of them, I mean, even one school, I think is Readiness. Let me just pronounce it correctly before saying, Readiness. And the presenter was quite clear, and he says you would rather go to a new premises. So it is an urgent matter, and I think that I can't speak. All of them consistently, majority have said that in old infrastructure, old neglected building, old unmaintained building. So it's an urgent matter, and I think that we owe it to the stakeholders, and we owe it to our special children that they should at least, at a minimum, have comfortable facilities to learn. So I think that, with that said, it then brings us to the end of our discussions. I hope that obviously this is not the last engagement, and there will be more. Can I request Honorable Adams? Is he still here? Okay, well, I think yes. We've been in this meeting for quite some time. I'll go to Honorable Hassan. Honorable Hassan.
Chairperson, you know, I had load shedding, so I've been in June at the moment. Can you hear me, Chair?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you just do a vote of thanks for us, please?
Sure,
Since
thanks,
we have you.
Chairperson. I would like to show my video, but like I experiencing load shedding and therefore network challenges. But I think on behalf of the committee, on behalf of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature and of the department, you know, just to express our heartfelt thanks to the stakeholders who took out time from their day, not just to brief us, but to really take us into confidence about what's going on. And you know, it's not just something we appreciate; it's part of our constitutional duty, and it's something we take very, very seriously. And we're very glad that you could have joined us for our first stakeholder engagement.
And over and above that, this is not the end. It's really just the beginning. And we're hoping that we'll be able to provide feedback at a later stage. And when we do discuss next time, it can be something a lot more substance, given what we've heard today. But I'll keep it short and sweet. We've been here for a long time. And also to thank the MEC and to thank the Gauteng department, who we don't always agree with, but I think we have a good enough partnership and relationship to ultimately deliver services to our people. But other than that, thank you so much. And yes, we look forward to further engagements. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Honorable Hassan. That brings us to the end of our session with stakeholders. Like I've said earlier, that this is not the last engagement. This is not the last program like this one. We have taken a decision as a committee that in this current term we'll be focusing on special schools, so you will be seeing a lot of us. As soon as we return to normality, we'll be doing a lot of oversight work in the schools, and we'll be putting a lot of, I don't want to say pressure on the department, but we will get them to really understand your plight much better. We'll be there. So we can assure you that we as a committee, our purpose is to make a difference when our term comes to an end in 2024. And we have set certain targets as a committee. Amongst those, critical at the top of our list is the infrastructure, and then obviously the curriculum and the support thereof. So with that words of assurance from myself as a chair and on behalf of the committee, I thank you for your patience and your time. Honourable members, I know we've been together for quite some time. It's been a long day. Thank you so much for patience and for ensuring that we get this program underway and succeeding, and the department and more. The department DDG Cheney, I hope we don't have an ambition of replacing HOD Musue, because we're doing quite well. So we'll be keeping an eye on those potential development. But with that, and the stakeholders, thank you for your contribution. We have noted, and we've been receiving all your presentation. We will be able to we'll give you feedback, and we'll compile a proper report that we will share with yourselves. With that said, thank you so much. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.